All right. All right. So let me first point out where you can find all these slides if you want them. You have to get into the restricted area here, which is this top secret password we were talking about before, and it's on the board. And then the slides are here in a PDF form, and here's the materials for the hands-on labs for the later modules are here, with step-by-step instructions to do the labs. So that's just what's in there, and I'm just going to talk about what's in these slides. All right, so here we go. Splunk fundamentals. All right, so we're going to talk about introducing Splunk, the components, installing it, and getting data in, which is, of course, the first project. First thing you have to do is install Splunk and get some data into it, and then you can start playing with it and seeing how it works. So Splunk is Google for log data. That's how they often describe it, and this is extremely important. If you think about a modern computer network, you have, at a business, you have web servers, you have email, you have a domain controller, you have Linux servers, you have hundreds of desktops scattered geographically all over the place, you got proxy servers and firewalls and routers, and all those devices have logs. And if you leave the logs on those devices, and then you get hacked or you have a malware outbreak, you have to go chasing the data on all those devices, trying to download the logs, trying to find out what happened, and that is worthless. That's why you need an SIEM system. You need a system that aggregates all the logs into one area and gives you an efficient tool to search through all that log data to find out what's going on your network. Otherwise, you will never succeed in discovering that you've been hacked or figuring out what happened when you get hacked, and everybody gets hacked. There was an innocent time, perhaps 5 years ago, when you could interview CEOs, and most of them would say, oh, we don't bother with security, we're not going to get hacked, it'll be fine. But now when they interview them, like 80% of them say they did get hacked last year and lost money as a result. It's just like employee theft, or fires in the building, or sickness in the building like COVID. You can't hide from it. It's going to happen. It's just a fact of life. You're going to get hacked, and so rather than pretending it's not going to happen, you have to have an instant response team to deal with it when it happens, just like you have fire drills and a fire response team. If a fire breaks out, you just don't say, gosh, nobody could have thought this would happen. You have a fire extinguishers and the evacuation plan and alarms and all that stuff, and you need the same stuff on your network now, because you know you're going to get hacked. So, Splunk does this. It has an index of all the data, which it forwards all the logs from every device to a central database, and then it gives you a search head to search through it all. And then you can search it manually, which is called threat hunting, to find out what's happening on your network. You can also set up alerts that will trigger when certain bad things happen, and you can also generate reports to hand off to management. And one thing Splunk was pushing, at least when I took the course, this version of the course, they were pushing that you could use Splunk for non-security purposes, like business. So the hands-on projects you're going to do are not about security. The ones from Splunk, they just have you doing business reports, like how many of our products in this category are selling, which one of our customers haven't paid the bills, and things like that. But I used to be a database analyst, and it's all the same. I mean, learning how to query a database to find facts, it's very similar. And I do have a wonderful thing called Boss of the SOC, which is the Splunk contest to find security events. And that's in here too, and that's the most fun. That's why I did all this. I did that contest, and it was wonderful. They have this they set up a bunch of servers on Amazon, and they hacked them with a bunch of hacking tools, and then they collected all the Splunk data, and then they made a captured flag contest with about 30 questions where you find all these attacks. And I thought that was wonderful, and that's in this course too. But you don't need to do that to get the certification. The certification is just in basic use of Splunk, and that they just use these financial examples. But I put it in for extra credit because I think that's the most fun, is using it to find real security problems on the network, which is what most people really use it for. Splunk seems to think it would be used for normal business analytics, but as far as I know, nobody really thinks of Splunk as the main tool for that. They'd use like Microsoft has a business analytics tools for that. Anyway, but the point is, Splunk has the same job as any search engine or any database. They have a whole bunch of data that's not really structured all the same way, and you have to somehow search through it. Just like Google has to search through all these web pages, and they're not all formatted the same way. So it ingests data from all these sources. Your end devices, like these computers, can do it. Network devices like routers and switches and firewalls, virtual machines, Amazon cloud servers, your portable devices, sensors for your operational technology systems that are running factories and stuff. Any data you got has logs, and it can send those logs forward to an indexer, which can index it into Splunk. Anything that is commercial that has been sold to any extent at all has a Splunk forwarder provided with it, because everybody uses Splunk. But if you have some weird thing like you wrote your own software, you can write your own forwarder to forward and index that in Splunk. You can customize it so everybody can figure out how to get it in there. And so you can feed in logs and any other kind of information like alerts, metrics, tickets. It doesn't have to be logs, although usually it's logs. Any kind of data that you choose to think of as useful, you can forward it to Splunk. And then Splunk just helps you index it and search it, and it does so in a way that is very luxurious and convenient for the humans. Now, I mentioned it's very expensive, and this is a general rule in computing. Humans are the real cost. Technology is cheap compared to humans. So people say, it'd be cheaper, we're just going to use Linux and OpenOffice. And you can try that, and you'll find out it's really hard for your workers to get the job done, and it's really hard for you to find workers that are qualified. Whereas if you go with the standard products that cost money, like Windows and Microsoft Office, then people can easily get classes and certifications in those, and it's easy to hire people that know how to use those products. So what happens is small businesses that are desperately short of money often use the free stuff that's hard to use, and their staff just suffers. And the businesses that actually make money, they use the expensive stuff that's luxurious, because they find out making it easier for our workers to get a job done is more valuable to us than not having to pay some software costs or some hardware costs. It's better to just have a powerful enough machine that you don't have to wait instead of using a cheaper machine that wastes your time, because the time of the staff is the real cost at large businesses. So here's how Splunk works. You have forwarders down here on all your devices, Linux machines, Windows machines, firewalls, and whatever else you got. Each of those, yeah.
This was the username and the password for...
Right there. Sure, all right. Anything else? Oh, let me check the online people to see if they have questions. This is good. Okay, I'm taking 123, 128, where's the link? They can't, okay, it looks like people are answering their own questions here, which is good. All right, fair enough. All right, yep, good. Looks like people have figured out the system. All right, so anyway, these are your forwarders. The forwarders live on all your devices, like your firewalls and end stations and routers and everything, servers. And they, as these collect logs, they run an extra agent on there that forwards the logs over the network to the indexer. The indexer gathers all that data and zips it up and stores it in a database. And the search head is what your investigators use to search through the index. So this is what we're going to see when you use Splunk. We're going to go into a search page and just search all this log data. As far as configuring these forwarders to send the data up there, we're only going to do a couple of very rudimentary examples of that in this class. Configuring all the forwarders comes for later certifications, and we're not going to do it in this class. But anyway, it's not very difficult. So Splunk Enterprise is the main product everybody uses, and it's the one we're going to use in this class. That is the one you intend to install on your own server, and it's the natural one to train on, because you can use the free version, install it on just your laptop and use it, and learn how to use Splunk, which is what we're going to do. Companies might want to use Splunk Cloud, where you pay Splunk to run it on their servers. Now, I'm consulting for a lot of companies now, and I'm consulting for some critical infrastructure companies, and one of the big issues there is we are not allowed by law to use cloud services like this. It's not considered secure enough. If you think about that, if you were to use Splunk Cloud running on Splunk servers, that means you're sending all your log data up to Splunk, potentially exposing it if Splunk is sloppy or they get hacked. And that's probably okay for most businesses, but that's not okay for critical infrastructure businesses or government businesses or military. They have to run it on your own server under your control, so you didn't send that data off to some third party which might expose it. So that's an issue. In fact, that's a pretty big issue. One of the groups I'm consulting for is using a thing called OneTrust, and OneTrust was designed to be run in their cloud. And their product isn't really designed to be run locally, but we have to do it that way for legal reasons. So it's difficult, but that's life. And then there's something called Splunk Lite I've never used, some small version for small IT environments, and I don't really know anything about it. But anyway, we're going to use Splunk Enterprise, which is the main standard one people use. And then you can have apps. Splunk is a framework that does some basic functionality, which is all we're going to need, but you can add apps that add functionality to it, just like you have apps in Chrome that connect to a particular firewall and so on, and a bunch of people donate them and put them on Splunkbase. All right, and there's a bunch of enhanced solutions, like they have some kind of service intelligence, enterprise security, user behavior analytics. These are advanced products. I've never used them, but you know, Splunk has a whole enterprise of advanced products which cost more money. And like I say, those are for the further certifications beyond this class. So you have users. Now this, by the way, I should mention, this is why there's a free version of Splunk. The way they charge you with Splunk is they charge you by the amount of data you're using. And so if you don't have a license and run Splunk for free, you can only ingest a little bit of live data, but you can examine all the old archive data you want to, which is fine for this class. We're just going to use archive data, and there's no restriction. But the other restriction they have, which I thought is brilliant, is with the free version, you cannot make any users other than the administrator. So everybody has to log in as administrator. And of course, you couldn't really use it that way. That means every user could delete data, change the logs, shut down the thing, mess up the configuration. That's a good thing for teaching. That means you can only use it in a fake teaching environment. Therefore, they're not losing any money, and therefore, we're practicing with the full product. It has all the features, except for being able to make users that are not administrative. And we're going to install a trial version of the Enterprise here, so you'll be able to do this for a while. But if you were to use it for, I think, 90 days, it will downgrade to the free version, and then you can only use the administrator account. So that's pretty harmless. All right. So you log in. Like many products, many hacking products, they didn't bother to write a GUI, a graphical user interface. What most people do is they make a product that runs and it just opens a web server. And you just open a web browser to see an interface. That's what Splunk does. It just listens on the local host address on port 8080, which is what people usually do. And then you just go to that web in a web browser and you can control it there. So you log in, and then you'll see this search pane, which looks a lot like the Google. You just have a place to search, and that's why they call it Google for log data. Mostly all you do is put searches in here and search through the data to find out what's happening on your network. And there are apps that you can have different workspaces, but we're not going to use anything except the Home app and the Search and Reporting app, which are the two default ones people use. The Home app looks like this. You got a Splunk logo in the corner, and if you click that, you'll always go back home. And here, you do things you're only going to do once, like import data. And then you go to Search and Reporting, which is the only thing we're going to use, where you get to that Google-like page. And that's here. And in Search and Reporting, you can, there we are, you can put search strings here, and you can change, the one real important thing to know is the time range. By default, Splunk will only search data from the last 24 hours because if you were at an enterprise network recording live data, you typically only want to know what recently happened. But of course, in this class, we're going to be using archived data, which is old. So the first thing you have to do is change this to all time. Now, they warn you, in a real enterprise environment, you almost never use all time because it uses a lot of CPU and produces a lot of results. You usually don't care about searching through all time. You usually are researching an incident on your network and you only want to search a certain time period. But in a training environment, that's typically what you want because you're using archived data. Now here you see a summary of the data that's been imported to Splunk. You see how many events. Events are items of log data, things that were sent up from log, and it tells you the earliest event and the latest event, so you see what's going on. And you can get a summary here, which is very handy. All right. So the data summary will give you a nice list of three different things. You can see the number of events by host. Host is just a host name on a computer. You configure your name might be Pandora, next one might be Hamlet or something. You assign your machines host names, and that's the host here. The source is the name of the file or stream or other input, and source type is the type of data. If it's a standard type of data, which most everything we use is, like web server logs, Active Directory logs, things like that. Then you go to the Events tab. Down here are the events. And what you see here are the log entries one by one. So you can use Splunk in a really dumb way by just reading the events one by one down here. Now that is not getting much good out of it, but that is one way to use it. In the same way, if you've used Wireshark, Wireshark lets you see network traffic and you can look at the packets one by one if you want to. But in both cases, you usually don't want to do that because you have, as you can see, something like 500,000 events. So you can look at log events one by one, but there's 500,000 of them, so that's not going to be very efficient. What you have to do is configure a search that will narrow down to what you want and give you a smaller number of things to look through. Or maybe you just want to look at some kind of global statistic, like a graph or something of them. So what we're going to do for the hands-on projects from Splunk in this class, they're going to be using Buttercup Games, and you're going to be seeing what products they sell, games, through their online store. And you're going to be doing queries that find out which games sold more and things like that. And you're a power user, and you're going to be finding information about which products sell and who's buying them and such. All right, so here's the Splunk components. And let me take another look for questions in the online thing. Looks like nothing new. There's also Splunk Mobile. Yeah, I've heard of that. Haven't used it, but I've heard there is such a thing. Yeah. All right. So like I say, indexer, search head, and forwarder are the three main components. And so the indexer is what takes all this data flying in from all these devices, and it builds an index, which is a database that is keyed, so you can efficiently search through it, and gets it ready to make it easy to easily store it because it's compressed, and quickly search through it because it's a properly indexed database. And if you've done any database administration, you'll learn this is you can have databases that are unstructured and it's very hard to search through them. To make a database that you can use efficiently, you have to give it an index and key it by the index so you can just zip right in and find the records you want. And that's what Splunk does, of course. It makes a well-indexed database that is fast to search. All right. And then you have search heads. These are the components that perform the searches. Go to the indexers and they find data. This is where you type in your query, like here, source type equals access combined, action equals purchase, status equals 200. So this will look at access logs of a web server, and it will look for web requests which had purchased an item and had a successful status of 200. So these are successful purchases on the internet. And they're going to get a list of those. All right. And so it's going to send this search request to the indexer and so that you see all the results that match their criteria. And they also have tools to summarize with charts or with bar graphs or circle pie graphs. You can summarize the data in various useful ways and pretty ways to make reports to give to management and to help you deal with this data that comes in. All right, the forwarders, like I mentioned before, the forwarders are the agents that live on every device that forward the data to the central log management system. And so each one of the agents running on the end devices is, of course, a small little program not using much resources, just grabbing the log and forwarding it. And that's the idea. So here it comes, IP equals, here's like a web server. And so here's an IP address, session disconnected, IP address, session connected, connected, disconnected, connected. Those are the log entries being sent up to the indexer. All right. There are other components which I've never used, but you use in big enterprise environments like a deployment server to hold on to software related to Splunk so you can install it from your own server, something to handle clusters of servers doing Splunk, and something to handle all the licenses of all these advanced products. So these are what you do if you're a big company and you have a big complicated deployment of Splunk across many servers and probably many locations. We're not going to do any of that hands-on in this class, but you should be aware that that does exist for the big companies. All right, and so what we're going to do is the simplest one, a single server. You just put everything on one server. Now, this is not what you do in an enterprise typically because you need multiple servers to handle the load, but it's fine for training. So that's what we're going to do. All right, everything's done on one server. All right, and that then there's Splunk server where you can manage forwarders. All right. And then there's multi-instance deployments where you have multiple indexers and multiple forwarders. Well, usually multiple forwarders. You have multiple indexers here and search head. All these things can be whole clusters, and they can be in the Amazon cloud and so on, which is what the big companies do. And so you can add a cluster of search heads and a bigger cluster of indexers and so on to handle all your data. And you'd have to do this if you were something like Amazon or Yahoo, where you just got an enormous amount of data, far more than any one server could handle. All right, and then you have an index cluster to handle it. And okay, so anyway, I think I'm just going to demonstrate the next part live, installing and ingesting data. I'm not going to bother with the slides. Let me, however, do a Kahoot. Let me first check for questions online. Looks like there are none. Okay. Let me do a Kahoot. This is a way to get extra credit in my classes. These are little sort of game show like contests in class. You can answer these questions, and the 3 people that do best get an extra 3 points. So, got to wait for it to slowly do a federated login with Google. All right. And then there it is. All right. What is this garbage? Stars? All right, there we are. They keep changing it. Okay, so go to kahoot.it on any device and put in that PIN number, and then any username you want to use, and you can play this game, which I recommend. I learned this from the US Air Force. They had a project to train high school students called Cyber Patriot, and they used these Kahoots to make it more fun to watch the lecture, and I said, that's great, I'm going to do that too. You know, all this security pretty much comes from the military, ultimately, as you would think. Yeah. Yeah, Kahoot.it, right there. Kahoot.it. There you go. All right. Good. There are always questions first time. You won't have any fun if you can't play the Kahoots. There's some people who don't like them, but most students, it's fun to break up the monotony of a lecture. Ah, looks like you got it. Yeah, got a lot of people. Good. This thing was free for the first 2 years, and then they cut the free use down to 10 people, so I had to pay to get 50. But 50 will do, I think. It's worth it. Get to my place to record these, which is here. Okay. Okay. Good. I'll wait a little bit more because people are still coming in. It's a full class, which is a good thing. You will never be sorry you learned Splunk. It's a very useful product. All right, looks like we got everybody that's coming. All right, which component collects the log data from servers and other devices? The right answer is forwarders. A lot of people have indexers, but that's not right. Indexers have the log data from forwards, and they just store it in a database, indexing it as they go. The forwarders are what collects the data. All right? All right. Which version of Splunk has components installed and administered on premises? That's Splunk Enterprise, the one we're going to use. By the way, I should mention Splunk is a San Francisco company. They are extremely successful. The people I know that work there are embarrassed by how luxurious it is, and at least as of a couple of years ago, they were the first highest paying company in America. They really pay their people well because they charge a pile of money to use this thing. It's like a luxury product. So anyway, it's a very good company and a very good product. All right, where can you see individual log records? Those are called events. Good. All right. So here are the winners. All right. Roots. Buttons. Now, if you, and you see, there's a real name. So Kate is going to get her points. If those other people want to get their points, they're going to have to come out of the closet and tell me their actual name, of course. But I think Root might have been some of this class before, but I think that might have been Woot. So I think these two people have to tell me somehow. You can put a message in Canvas or something. Let me know who you are, or you're not going to get your points. But anyway, all right, let's get back to the, am I adding on the wait list? Let's hear some questions. Can Splunk be used to get malware-based data? I'm not sure I understand the question, but you can certainly collect evidence of intrusions, and that might be valuable. Am I adding those on the wait list? Sure, I'll add everybody that's requested to add. I'll do it after the lecture. So I'm not sure if the wait list is working this semester, but anyway, anybody that wants in, I'm happy to add you. Just make a request online. Better do it quickly though, because these short-term classes, you're all good. I'm glad I answered it. Okay, good. So let me, I want to do the demo, but I ought to take a break first. So let me turn this recording off.